Hi, and welcome back to Family History with Chris. I am Chris, and this is part two of Juliann Fredrikke Hansen Ricks. I was going to do it all um, together, but then I changed my room, and so if you haven't noticed that the background's a little different, I hope this works. Uh, and also, to let you know, I'm just doing this on a laptop, so I apologize if it moves around every once in a while. So, the second part of the history is written by her daughter, Dora. Uh, I will refer back to a few things Mother had told me. In Denmark, they had green rolling hills for farmland. The missionaries told them we raised potatoes in America big enough for one meal, or one man a meal. In Denmark, the potatoes were like little marbles. They had to cook them uh, with the jackets on, then peel them as they ate them. Although her parents had plenty to get along with, they were very careful. They had I'm sorry, they had three suits of clothes, one for best, one for school, and one for every day. She wore wooden shoes for school and every day, and leather shoes for Sunday or best. They had a dressmaker come once a year. They had never had a sewing machine. My grandmother was a good seamstress. She made the girls' aprons and the boys' shirts. She spun wool and corded it. Mother helped to do this also. Mother learned to knit and crochet. She used to knit her brother's garters and her own stockings. When Mother went to school in Denmark, she had to walk 5 miles both ways. And I don't think that she's kidding either. So she had a forest to go through. She used to take an extra pair of stockings to change her stockings at the home of a kind old lady who was a friend of the family. The schoolhouse was too small to have a room of this kind for extra wraps. 30 was one word in the English language that Mother had a hard time to learn. Mother hated to be called lazy. Pearl Elizabeth was born on June 11th, 1892. John Alfonso was born September 16, 1893. The folks had just a threshers the day before. Mother's health broke, and Aunt Millie was there with her. Mother said, "What shall I do?" As Aunt Millie was just a little girl. Aunt Millie said, "We'll do the best we can until the midwife gets here." Earl Edwin was born November 21st, 1895, at Salem. Father was still in the timbers. Every cent of money Father would make, Mother would tell him to pay his debts. She would suffer all kinds of hardships so they could hold on to their home. Mother had to learn to milk the cows with one child in the manger and one by her side. She also raised chickens. She sold or traded eggs to buy groceries or dried goods. She did all she could to get out of debt and get a home of their own. Henry Hans Peter was born 19th of January 1898 at Salem. Father was at home in the winter. If Mother had any spare time, she would go and help the neighbors sew. Mother had 110 chicks hatched by May 10th, 1899. She hatched them all by old hens. She took care of the sows, and raised 30 pigs that summer. Owen Winford Ricks, that's my great grandfather, was born May 16th, 1899. They bought a surrey that fall. John and Earl thought that they were big riding in the front seat of the surrey. Ellis Kenneth was born February 9th, 1902, at Salem, Fremont, Idaho. Archie Leroy was born February 7th, 1904, at Salem. Aaron Orson was born October 12th, 1905, in Salem. The last children were born after they moved 2.5 miles between Teton and Sugar City. Julia Joanna was born April 29th, 1908, at Teton, Fremont County, Idaho. Eldon Cecil was born April 4th, 1911, Teton, Idaho. Dora Irene was born July 20th, 1913 at Teton, Idaho. This was where the family was raised. Father passed away in May of 1920, which left Mother to provide for us. On the farm, we had a rock cellar on the north side of the house. Under the stair landing, the roof was made of boards. Inside, Mother tacked unbleached muslin next to the boards so the dirt would not fall through. The walls were whitewashed with slack slime. There were shelves on the south side of which the cans of milk would set. She would make as high as 70 pounds of butter a week. She would send it to Sugar City early Saturday morning with one of the boys before it had a chance to melt. The sugar factory men, such as the Caddies, Jacobs, Blakes, Austins, and Camp Houses, would buy it from her because it was nice and fresh. She sold her butter for 20 cents a pound. Some of the boys, for a joke, put a sign on the cellar door, "Butter, 40 cents a pound." It soon reached that price. She soon sent her buttermilk to the butter customers. If there was any butter left over, it was taken to the Sugar City Mercantile. When the family was home, Mother used to make as high as 16 loaves of bread at one time. During the summer, there was generally 4 or 5 extra people from Salt Lake City. When Mother was raising her family, the people used to say, "What a shame, another boy." Mother would say, "I'll have a girl for my old age." Sure enough, she did. Some of the women would ask her how she managed to get all those boys ready for Sunday school on time. She would start on Monday morning and brush the boys' pants. If there were any buttons off, she would sew them on. If there was any time left, she would start to wash. Sometimes she would put them to soak in the cold water overnight. I remember a good many times in the summer she would take the wash tubs out by the ditch, and she put the clothes to soak overnight in the nice clear ditch water. If we had to use ditch water, we would fill the wash boiler and carry it to the house and put it on the stove to heat. In the summertime, when we had such large crowds, the front room table would never be taken down. As the dishes were washed and wiped, they would be put back on the table. Mother used to have all the school teachers come to our place. In that way, they would get to know each other better. The pioneers didn't know what shoe polish was. My mother used to turn the stove lids up and scrape off the soot and mix it with sugar and water to polish with their shoes. Cool. Maybe I can make my own shoe polish. I don't know. This day and age, do we really use shoe polish? I know on the mission we did. Maybe for Sunday shoes if I had some. They didn't have lye, so they used to put the ashes in a barrel and save them to make soap. I remember my mother used to tell about wetting the dirt floor down at night after all the family was in bed. Mother took care of her father, Hans Peter Hansen, until his death on February 27th, 1914. Mother was set apart as secretary of the Bannock Stake YLMIA. Young. I'm not even going to guess what that is. If you know, let me know. On November 21st, 1890, she served in this capacity for 3 or 4 years. She taught a Sunday school class for 2 years. She was set apart as second counselor in the Moody Creek Primary to Louisa Huskinson. October 1st, 1960, the primary was reorganized, and she was sustained as first counselor to Selena Searle September 21st, 1919, and released August 21st, 1921. She was sustained as a Relief Society teacher the same year. She had the east part of Moody Creek to cover. This part belonged to the Teton Ward. She would start at the old Jacob Nelson Ranch and get to the Bigler's farm in time for dinner. She would then go until she was through. It would take her all day with a horse and buggy. Mother was registrar of the Moody precinct in the years 1928 and 1930. She worked at the polls sometimes. When Mother would make any extra money, she would buy something useful. After election one year, she bought an auto robe and some house slippers. One year, she baked bread for the Mexicans and made enough money to buy a little white enameled top table, which Dora was still using when she wrote this. In the fall of 1935, Erin got married. Mother and I went to Salt Lake City to live with her brother, who had just lost his wife. We spent a very enjoyable winter there. Mother did as much as temple work as she could. I would go to the organ recitals as much as I could and guided tours around the temple square. The spring of 1936, Erin and Miriam came down to and took us to California to see Mother's sister and to see my sister Julia, as she was flat on her back with a bad heart and kidney trouble. We came back and lived on the farm that summer. In the fall of 1936, we moved into an apartment of Louisa Baker's. Mother was set apart as chairman of the record committee in the Genealogical Society of the Rexburg First Ward by Bishop Hugh Wrighton, 9th of August, 1937. She moved to the Fourth Ward, February 22nd, 1940. She was Relief Society teacher from when she took her stroke the year 1945. She was busy all the time working at something. She made a quilt top for each of the boys. She knit all the boys' sweaters and socks for those that desired them. She knit slacks and sweaters for the Red Cross. She knitted mittens for her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She did a lot of quilting at Relief Society. She would stay until the last stitch was taken. She was such a good quilter that she was asked to quilt on the silk quilts. Mother was very patient all through her last illness. She would take a shaking spell or convulsion, and water would pour off her big beads. I would have to hold her when she had these spells. She passed away January 12th, 1950 at 1:30 p.m. When we were ill, she cared for us. In time of discouragement, she encouraged us. In time of trouble, she was the first to come to our aid. When all the world doubted us, she trusted us. When a task seemed impossible, she showed us how easily it could be accomplished. She didn't leave us earthly riches, but she left us wealth in the truth of the eternal plan, which is impossible to measure in dollars and cents. She taught us by precept and example through her trials and tribulations have been many. She has fought a brave fight and has lived a righteous life. She was always active in the work of our Lord, and in the later years, an ardent researcher of genealogy. We stand firm in the faith and knowledge that she has joined her noble companion, our Father. Awesome. Okay, so some things I learned on this is okay, so she lived what back in the late 1800s to early 1900s, being in Denmark, having to walk 5 miles both ways, wearing wooden shoes. Well, she's from Denmark, so uh, that's actually kind of neat. But having to sew your own clothes, only having 3 pairs of clothes, uh, having to get your own food, like milk the cows while having kids with you, uh, have the eggs and having to feed the pigs, just all sorts of things that in today's day we take for granted. Kind of like the butter is like, shoot, that's y- do you even make your own butter? So I I mean, with the prices going up and everything, it's kind of like I need to learn these things just so I can do it. So, but I don't live on a homestead or anything, so it'd be kind of hard to do that. Uh, anyway, I'm thankful that uh, you know John M. Ricks have put this together. I'm sure some other people have done the same thing. as I saw others in the memories. They kind of look the same. Uh, but yeah, just learning about your ancestors, I think is really fascinating. Remember who you are, where you come from, how bad it was. I mean, it probably was good for them back in the day, but very different. Uh, I'm thankful for the time that I live in and for the hardships that my ancestors had to go through to get me here. Uh, and that I will leave you. And I hope you enjoyed this. And if you liked it, subscribe, leave me a comment if you like to learn anything else. We'll talk to you on the next one. Thanks. Bye.